we are all artists, not in the maybe traditional role of painting a canvas or playing a song or dancing a dance or whatever. Like, we need to invigorate and awaken a kind of the creative spirit that each of us has access to through our own authentic way.
Hello and welcome to 21st Century Vitalism. This is a podcast exploring how we can best maintain a sense of energy, inspiration, and wakefulness while navigating the uncertain and often challenging circumstances of the modern age. My name is Brett Kane, and I'll be your host on this journey as we have a multidisciplinary conversation with a wide variety of speakers from all around the world. This typically includes spiritual teachers, somatic therapists, artists, activists, environmentalists, just about anyone else who I feel is bearing this torch well. Speaking of somebody who is doing just that, this week's episode is with the legendary visionary artist Amanda Sage. For those of us who are keyed into the world of visionary art, she needs no introduction, but for those of you who may just be dipping your toes into these waters, primarily through this show, Amanda is one of the core pillars of the American visionary art movement. Having developed her unique style while living in Vienna for over a decade, studying with the art master and founder of Fantastic Realism, Ernst Fuchs, Amanda has gone on to establish herself as one of the heaviest hitters in this scene. She's currently serving on the board of directors for the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, which is kind of like the high council of visionary artists, which was started by Alex and Allison Gray. You can think of them as kind of like the Jedi Order for psychedelic art. Beyond that, she's also a lecturer, educator, and dreamer who commonly explores themes of regeneration, interconnectedness, and transformation. Many of these themes can be found in the hour to follow, but I'd also recommend checking out some of her work while you listen to this conversation. That can be found over at amandasage.com. She also has a schedule for her upcoming workshops hosted there as well. Last but not least, she is also the founder of an online creative community called the Vision Train, which you can check out over at visiontrain.org. That is something that we explore in this episode. So if you're on the fence, just give this a listen and see if it's something that resonates with you. So that's what we're going to be getting into for today's episode. It's exciting stuff. Before that, though, if you like what we're doing here and you want to lend a hand and keep the momentum going, head on over to patreon.com/21st Century Vitalism and consider becoming a member. A small monthly donation helps me keep the lights on and the fires burning bright. If money's tight, I totally understand. You're also welcome to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, or like us on Facebook. If you're already tuning in from YouTube, a like and a comment also go a long way. So again, thank you so much for listening. Without further ado, please sit back, drink some tea, maybe do some stretches, but most importantly, open your heart for Amanda Sage. Okay. Amanda, hello, welcome to the show. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for giving me some of your time. I follow you on social media and I see you are quite busy, so it's really cool that we can sit down and kind of talk about some of this stuff. How are you doing today?
Whew, another day. I feel grateful. It's nice to take a pause and have a little conversation within a contained amount of time, even in the midst of all of the things. And I feel in general just really grateful to be doing what I get to do and showing up in the world and pushing the boundaries. Feel like that's a lot of like what I'm experiencing currently and calling on that source energy power that I think we can call on when we're really passionate and when we're in need or it's there for us. There's a bigger story going on. I'm reminded in extreme moments of that more and more.
Yeah. For somebody who does what you do, painting this visionary art, is there ever a moment when you're not pushing the boundaries?
Oh, well, we take pauses. I mean, there's the tending to lately it's been coming up a lot like this, the meat suit. Like tending to the meat suit, tending to, our lives, tending to our families, Um, and I would hope that we would continue to find more time to slow down. I think that I wonder sometimes if the way that I roll and if that as a measure is maybe not a good thing, a healthy thing for others. I think that there is a part of pushing the boundaries that is it could be seen as manic behavior, um,
Mm,
and there's an upswing and a downswing, just like with
yeah,
everything. And so I think we need to be attentive to that, um, in just our own personal lives, but also culturally too, and collectively. And what are we really aiming for? What is the reason and
yeah,
the deeper reason? Am I trying to prove something to somebody,
yeah,
and why? So I think it's all interesting. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear somebody who's got such an established career still dealing with these things that I think a lot of people who are just starting off kind of deal with. And I think that that is just a testament to kind of the artist's way, and that some of these things are perennial, and your relationship to these energies likely shifts a little bit, but it's still an element that shows up in the artistic life. How do you kind of stay in touch with kind of your motivation and your intention, and like, when you recognize these moments where you're like, "Ooh, I'm kind of starting to stray a little bit," what do you do to kind of stay in balance for that?
Mm, that's a good question. And to be honest, everybody's path is very unique. And I know for younger artists or those starting out, one has to paint a picture of what it's like and what it's going to be like and what one should be doing. Um, it's such a fluid thing, a perennial. You mentioned that, like maybe the cycle of touring or cycle of being on the road compared to the cycle of being at home. It depends on what kind of art you're focused on. Some people really work best if they're alone in the studio. Some people work best collectively. Um, yeah, what gets me back in touch? I mean, physical movement is really important. Um, Yoga, dance, hiking, being in nature, getting reconnected with like your source vision, um, eating good food, tending to a garden, tending to a fire, tending to your household. I mean, I think that's something that really does, like folding laundry. Actually, I do really enjoy some really mundane tasks. They help me kind of ground the kind of loftier, bigger stories and visions that I experience sometimes, and that's essential. I think it can get um, yeah, intoxicating almost, thinking about the future or thinking about how things could be, and grounding into the present, grounding into where we are now, is essential, um, into the truth. I'd like to talk about that quite a bit today because I think that's something, especially in the arts and say visionary art, um, can be a means for great disappointment
Hmm.
and also misconception about oneself and others. And I I hope that in my life I haven't done a disservice, um,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
of kind of like, I mean, I got swept onto this track of live painting over a decade ago. Like I think we met about 12 years ago, maybe briefly
Mm.
at
Yeah.
Root Wire.
Yeah.
Can't believe it's been that long. Um,
Yeah. I know.
but that circuit of festivals and live painting and exhibiting work in at festivals was really hitting a stride about a decade ago, and I little did I know, how many folks would be watching, right? Of course, little did I know, but it's funny. It's like when you're painting, you don't have eyes on the back of your head. And how many people are like, wow, that's put out a prayer, put out a prayer. I want to do that too.
Yeah.
And what does it take to actually live that and to do that and to sustain oneself and to sustain, um, you know, um, yeah, I guess a lifestyle, but also how does this fit in to a larger cultural context? What am I really saying? So there's an attraction to being on stage. There's an attraction to being celebrity. That's something that's across the board, that you get praise if you're the one up on stage. And I think so many of my musician and DJ friends and would also speak to this. But there's, I think, a bit of um, there's something to be said and talked about that isn't talked about much, is the shadow side of that. And
Yeah.
also the ideal of that being success.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I can think back to who I was back in 2013, first making contact with your work and many others, and the idealism that kind of came from that. And I was also quite a bit younger, really new to like psychedelic journeying and just this culture that we share. And I remember then thinking, like, the sense was that if you engage with this long enough, then you're going to like transcend kind of the mundane and kind of move towards something that was unrecognizable from what we had experienced before. That was my experience of kind of joining this more visionary culture and also just my young naivete. But what I'm recognizing as I've gotten older is that, as you had mentioned, kind of finding the grounding and doing the laundry and just doing very earthy household things, that to me is actually connects me almost more to these kind of divine, visionary, transcendent states, is like recognizing that all of those things, all of those symbols and those deep meanings are actually present in every single moment. And it doesn't look like any one thing. And the more that we try and pinpoint it as something like a peak experience, the less we are actually connected to it, because it is literally everything and you can't put a limit on it.
But don't you have to, you could hear that, and we've had many great masters tell us, or, write it down, speak it out. It's been repeated over and over again down through the ages. But in some ways, I feel like humans have to experience it themselves to believe it,
Yeah.
and I think the vigor and the of youth, is like we're explorers, got to go out and discover it for ourselves and fall on our faces too, to then be able to then become eventually a teacher and a master or whatever, to speak from experience. So it's a part of the cycle, and to avoid
Hmm.
it is also a bit of a folly. So I mean, I
Yeah.
I think that the playground of the festival is is a really great place to do it. I mean, the thing is the danger of being in environments and around others that are not safe um, guardians is always the case. You never know, but yeah. I mean, I look back to that time, and there was such a flowering of culture. At least I was in the midst of it, and it felt like, yeah, we were on the brink of something. And it was also around that time of, it was like 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar. There was like a lot of people within the kind of like festival scene that I was a part of, that you were a part of, that were pointing towards this time of great transformation for humanity. And I think I definitely felt like I was a part of that. I wanted to
Hmm.
be a part of that. And you know, what happened on December 21st, 2012, was there something major that all of a sudden happened and we were all like these light beings and ascended? No, still had to do the dishes the next day,
Yeah.
you know. So and that's been an interesting journey up until now, like how how to survive and how to thrive as a part of a movement and a culture that was very much a, yeah, I don't want to say it was insular, but in some ways it was and has been, still is. But because of some of the things that people were interested in exploring, one being psychedelics, because that not being uh, legal. So,
Hmm.
where do you go to experience these things? And then the culture that would ensue around it, going out into the woods. I mean, of course, Papadosio and Anthony and of course a bunch of our friends, Random Rab, Human Experience, a lot of, they wouldn't just play festivals, they would also play venues and the music. I mean, the music is what fuels a movement often,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And brings people together. And I remember as being on the side of the visual art, um, getting to create next to them, like on stage, and to be invited, you know, that was a big deal. And I don't experience that as much anymore. I don't see that happening as much anymore. Um, but what what that did for me, I mean, it really brought a kind of sense of collaboration that was trans medium. It transcended the medium, and I think that was interesting, really interesting, and it fueled my brushstroke to be acknowledged in that way. And now you'll see, the just so many live artists, and I'm on board. The more there is, the more there is. A little shout out to Lisette Murphy and Neon. That's a slogan from them, and I just love it. The more there is, like more art, more art. Like let's make more art. But I think there it also creates some false expectations, potentially, which we can get into just around, if I put myself out there, doesn't matter done if I've really done the work to get to this part, and the what's become this thing that I think a lot of folks even carry with great pride, the renegade artist, and what does that do for the culture? And how is that like, there's almost like this rebellious implosion within the culture. And because when things become established, when things grow, it's like you create guidelines and rules to work within. I mean, every society and culture goes through this. In the beginning, there's a lot of experimentation and growth, and and then eventually it's kind of like, well, we got to create some systems.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's something you mentioned right in the beginning that I want to keep coming back to, though, is like this community, and what it is that we're actually a part of, and what does it take to be a community member, no matter what
Mm.
community you're in. And I hope, and I think this is where we're going towards something that is going to last and is of essence. Like we can't survive in as lone wolves out there. We're not of that species, right? And
Hmm.
so we need each other. And I think this art movement potentially, in best case scenario, is pointing towards these um, pain points of the individual success, and hopefully going towards a greater look into what it is to be a collective or to be a community, and ask these questions. I'm interested in asking these questions. To where have we gone wrong, and how can we re um, remember maybe what how it works to truly be in community.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if a big part of that has to do with uh, elders and kind of like I feel like at least from the Midwestern psychedelic artistic community that I was a part of for a long time, there really wasn't that many elders because it was such a new, novel thing. And I feel like we really, the people who were able to experience that while we are still young in years of age, we, yeah, exactly. There are still so many opportunities for people to step forward. Now that we've seen a cycle, I feel like with the 2012 art boom, at least here in the Midwest, and then it's kind of like subsided. But now, like, we have an opportunity for another wave, but it needs people who were at the previous one to be able to see where the pain points were and to be able to make it more sustainable and more lasting and more real and connective and actually mutually resourceful for everybody. I think that that's like a really big thing that a lot of people are really lacking right now, especially considering the broader world stage that we're all facing. I think right now we need like very resourced communities of real connection and showing up even beyond the party in ways that are just often not seen in these kinds of scenes.
Yes, I'm so glad that you just said that. And elders, I was like drinking out of my cup here, and I'm like saying, this is Allison
Hmm.
Gray, and to speak to visionary art for those that are maybe like not familiar with this term, it's it was really coined in the contemporary sense by Alex and Allison Gray, and I would really consider them elders in this scene that have been a large part of. Um, I don't want to say creating it, but have been very influential. I mean, they were very influential to me. I had lived in Europe for all of my 20s, and I studied there, and I worked as an assistant and apprentice to an artist there. Ernst Ernst Fuchs is who I was the assistant to, and Michael Fuchs was his son. That was my teacher. Um, and coming to the U.S., I met the Greys. I had learned about them, through books and all the people that I met through Ernst Fuchs, who was a good 20 years their elder.
Yeah.
And when I met the Greys, they kind of adopted me into their circle and started, through their extensive touring over a period of 10 to 20 years with different bands and music. Of course, Tool, took up their Alex's work and really put him on the map in a sense. And but the touring with music and festivals, they would share these presentations, these talks on visionary art. And that's where I think they've been the main ones to kind of propel that. And so, who are visionary artists? Who are the ones that are doing it now? Alex likes to say, from cave art to rave art, and which I think is great. I mean, it's like the visionary art is like the bringing the visions forth, from the deep caverns of one's own experience, be that through dreams or psychedelic experiences, meditation, near death. There's images and patterns and things that we do find in commonality with each other across borders all around the world. There's a connection. I think visionary art has been with alongside the rise of the internet has
Mm-hmm.
provided a portal and access for people that were feeling, seeing, experiencing things that were already stepping outside of the kind of major religious institutions or academic institutions and questioning things, questioning everything. And I think visionary art and culture, the festival scene also was a place to experiment and a place to explore what was outside of the boundaries. And I think this is a natural thing that has happened from uh, the great quest of empire, which is something that we're in the like final crumblings of in some ways, maybe not final, but in the ladder. There's like
Mm-hmm.
this realization that this kind of empire doesn't work for
Yeah.
long term, especially for um, the reciprocity with our with the earth that we live on, with the minerals, with the animals, with the plants, with each other. Like we can't be in an extractive relationship forever without obliterating ourselves and everything else. So
Yeah.
there's more and more people that are waking up to that this is not the way. We can't we can't sustain this. And so what do? Is we look back towards um, maybe more intact cultures, indigenous cultures. How did they? What was their relationship with the land? And so I think that's a big part of this. And so people coming back together to kind of experiment with a new concepts. To me, it just hasn't taken. There's plenty of, I'd say, so regenerative uh, initiatives in agriculture. You can see this across the permaculture, um, uh, and even in kind of like all sectors, but they
Yeah.
haven't really taken the forefront because of how deeply embedded the current systems are
Yeah.
in our lives. I mean, even if you look at, plastics in everything, plastics in our paint, plastics in our clothing. I mean, how hard has it been for me in the past decade? And of course, I'm calling myself out. I could have many times said absolutely not. And I know friends that have. And I look to them and I feel um, sometimes, you know, ashamed a little bit. And
Mm.
I'm just being honest. But
Yeah.
to do things and know that they're not um, right,
Yeah.
that's the time that we're in. But are we going to talk about it? Are we going to continue to, you know, what is it? Are we going to be transparent and honest and continue to take steps in that direction? Or are we just going to be outright hypocrites?
Mm. Yeah. So, what do you feel like the role of visionary art is in that process of inquiry? Looking at something like you paint, I mean, these very elaborate, beautiful, symbol rich images that really resonate with people who have had similar experiences with these textures and tones. But for the people who may have never had a visionary experience, or at least one that they'd recognize, what would you say like the role is in kind of this mass kind of inquiry that we need to be taking?
I think in the best case scenario, this kind of art can bypass language and can speak to the heart, to the soul, to the spirit, and touch on, maybe like give a little infusion of recognition, of affirmation that 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 it's real, that there's something, that there's a mystery that we're a part of, that we're in, that's not totally knowable, and that is greater than any one thought, right? And that is, to me, like my paintings too, I don't see them ahead of time. Like they're very participatory and they develop as I go. I trust the process deeply. And it's very auditory in some ways to me. Like synesthesia is an interesting thing that I haven't dove in too deeply in, but I'm pretty sure that I experience a kind of synesthesia, like just in color as a taste. Like certain colors, I can taste them, but I don't
Ah,
literally taste them. Don't eat your
yeah,
paint. But
yeah,
um, pa- I think the art for people that have never had, say, a psychedelic experience um, through a substance. I want to be clear that you can have a psychedelic experience, and I think many people have and do without any substances, and that
sure.
can come
Giving birth
through a
is
fever. Huh?
said. I'm sure giving birth is pretty psychedelic.
Wow, right. And I have
Yeah.
not done that in this life, but exactly. And so there's a lot of things that people don't even talk about with each other, have never shared with each other. But an image could maybe be a helpful affirmation of a God experience, or something that shows, that helps us see that there is more than what we see.
Yeah.
And that, I think, and if it's a little sticker or it's a print or it's something that's in your life that you can see, look at over and over again. I like it when people hang art, in the bathroom. It's a
Yeah.
place where you can be by yourself and you can really go down, you know, uh, get down with an image, Um, and I think that they're tools. I really do, for a kind of revealing and awakening. Um, and it's a deeply personal experience. And there's a collective of people. There's a community of people. There are little pockets of them all over the world that are gathering where it's associated. There's an association. I mean,
Hmm.
I know that there's also a lot of people that are drawn to these spaces, drawn to also being guides and teachers, where they themselves are also still deep in the healing.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're ever going to get out of healing. I feel like we have like this, like, generations of displacement and
Yeah.
survival. And, you know, there's there there's a long line behind all of us, whether we were the slave drivers or the slaves, you
Yeah.
know, that is very, very deep and very, very intergenerationally wounding, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we do have, our generations now have the responsibility, because of the access and the access to tools, really, to do the work in this generation, to stop perpetuating the unconscious trauma
Hmm.
of of displacement and disconnect. Um, so I mean, it seems like it's such a lot to carry, and I think the the festival has a place where this can happen. It often, I don't know how much it does happen though, because the party takes over.
Yeah.
I do think that the party's necessary, but we also need to do the work, and we need to gather in circle. We need to like shed the tears. We need to
Hmm.
talk about the challenging stuff. And then we also need to like physically do the work together. And
Yeah.
this is where I know that we even talked about this back then, and some people are doing it, but not enough. How do we leave a trace of awesome and not a
Trace of
pile of
awesome. Yeah.
trash, not a pile of trash, Like it's, um, yeah, sometimes the great ideal can be, exactly that, which is the paradox of it.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we need to keep talking about it and doing things. So, what can I do is, I think, a big question for many at some point.
Yeah, I think the festival setting can be a really wonderful place to kind of crack open, especially for
Right.
people who've never really had access or opportunity to do that. And it's almost kind of encouraged in those spaces. But I have noticed within my experience, as especially like technology has kind of really advanced in social media, and I do feel like there is like a very strong corporate interest that is now present in a lot of these festivals. I'm
Right.
an hour or two away from Electric Forest, which was one of my big cracking open moments with the music and the art and the immersiveness of it. And I'm sure it's amazing now still, but it really is such a moneyed thing at this point. And I do wonder, you know, for me, the question feels like once we crack open, how do we tend to what comes out? And I feel like within the mainstream culture, the response is to continue cracking open
Hmm.
without actually tending to the things that are coming up. And it's like, well, just keep on spending the money. Just keep on coming to these
Hmm.
really expensive weekends where you can hang out with your friends and get attractive pictures of yourself and do your outfits and all that. And that's fun. That's fine. But, I do wonder at what point, what the next step is once you have done that. I think it's going to be unique for everybody. I think one person's going to respond by putting it on a canvas, and others going to be putting it into music. Some people are going to get so inspired and they're going to get into legislation and being a politician. Like, I think that that's something that's really needs to be encouraged, is that we need every front covered. So like taking that inspiration and then bringing it into just like mundane society, for me, is something that actually gives me a lot of inspiration. I'm a manual therapist. That was kind of my response, was kind of like, oh, I can help people with their nervous systems, and that feels natural and easy for me to do. So, that's something that I think a lot of people, kind of drawing back to what we mentioned earlier, there's an allure to celebrity and to fame, but sometimes the most copacetic thing you can do is actually off of the stage as well.
Yes, exactly. How can because the idea here is not that everyone be an artist in the sense of, the musician on the stage, or the one painting the paintings, or, we're not all cut out for that. And it's not um that and it shouldn't be that way. We're all cut out for what we're cut out for, and we need to find that. What is it that where do we feel most authentic in bringing forth our voice and our gift? And the integration is really what you're talking about in many ways. And I think that is where the real work happens, right? And integration can be hard to do totally alone. It's nice to have some guides in a community. Um, you know, well, maybe you don't know, and maybe others don't know. I've been hosting these painting workshops around the world for about 15 years, and they're these real deep container dives where, yeah, it's like even the energy of a festival, but condensed into like 20, 25 people. And we go so deep, and it really reveals a lot. We support each other. Something happens that is just really profound. And then we scatter back out into the world and are supposed to just like carry on. And that I've noticed, you know, can be really hard, and there can be a desire to like want to be in that state all the time, which I understand. You know, but the daily work, of wherever you are, it's like there isn't this other place out there that is more conducive to keeping you in that state. There's some that may feel more challenging, but um, finding local community, finding local projects to get involved with. And then, I have to bring up this beautiful project that really bloomed in its current iteration out of the COVID crisis, is the Vision Train. And the Vision
Mm.
Train is a community that is really stems out of people that had come to these workshops, and found a kind of safety and community within them from all over the world. I opened a Zoom call on March 24th, 2020, sent out invitations to everyone that I knew. The Nonstop Vision Train Global Art Jam is leaving the station. You're all invited. Open indefinitely.
Yeah.
And so this became a place where no matter where you were, and you had a device, you could tap in to this space. You could put your camera on or not, but you were not alone. And the conversations that would happen here, the little workshops, the skill shares, the just hours and hours of music and making art together, or doing, or knitting, or doing whatever it was that you felt in that time, of your to do. Um, it kind of like wove a foundation that is still going 5 years later. We trained each other. We use this as a platform to also train ourselves into how do we keep the train on the tracks, and using the train as this metaphor, to link our little train cars together. Each one of us uniquely beautiful and perfect and valuable. Each one of us in our own train cars, to link them together to kind of like strengthen each other, as kind of like a support team. And, it's an iterative process. What's in your train car? What is your gift to the world? Well, I have a sense, but I'm not, not quite there yet. Well, what do you need to do? Maybe you need to articulate it. Maybe you need to draw it out. Maybe you need to do some writing, write it out. What are the things that you need to do to be able to give your gift away so that it may be seen? Because if you don't do it, nobody will ever know. And to acknowledge that. And this, actually the train started really coming through for me in around 2011, 2012, 2013 at Rootwire. We did a big collaborative train painting up on like the side stage. And this is the time when I was like, guys, this is what we're going to do. And to me, I see the train as this vessel, like we're going to have a real train. And I don't know how far off it is, but I think I hear it getting closer. But it's a train that goes opposite to manifest destiny. It's the train that takes the tracks and the infrastructure that's already there, but it goes back on the tracks from the west back east on kind of a journey back within, and a journey back into like reconciliation, remembering, and regeneration, to regenerate the soil and to leave a trace of awesome. So to me, the train is the answer in many ways to this quest, or this question around what is it that we can do. Each one of us has something to offer. I do believe it's a movement that is bubbling not out of just like one area or one person. This is a song, right? It's woven through songs, the train, through dreams and storybooks and through our culture. And it's something that we can get on board with. We can get off when we need to. And it's not just limited to artists. The expanded idea that we are all artists, not in the maybe traditional role of painting a canvas or playing a song or dancing a dance or whatever. Like we need to invigorate and awaken a kind of the creative spirit that each of us has access to through our own authentic way. And to provide the foundation for that to be discovered, to look, to experience in a safe space, in a decolonized space, in a take away the commercial aspect as much as possible. How can we fund a kind of, movement and revolution of the human spirit, unbridled, truth that can come through in safe environments? I mean, this is what I want to see, and this is what I think is going to be really attractive to people as the great systems start to crumble, socially, politically, financially, identity, all of these things, as we see this crumbling happening, where do I belong? What can I do? What's going to happen to the future? All these great questions. Well, do we ever actually really know? But you know what we can do? We can get together and we can like acknowledge that we are in heaven on earth right now. We can create that. We can explore what it is to be in right relationship in as much integrity as possible with each other. We can play it out. I mean, this is theater, this is social animation, but it's real. And I think it's like, so where are you now? Get involved with your local arts center, your local community, go be a volunteer. If you have a void and you feel depression that is like, this loss of knowing what it is, you have to make yourself available to hear the call. So you got to put yourself into a place of service where, however that is the key. And that's something that for me, that keeps me waking up every day, because it's not about the individual success. It's so clear to me. Like my success can only and there's a balance too. It's like if you're not tending to your own fire enough, you can't help others.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger story here, to me, of visionary art and culture, is that we are undeniably interconnected, and we are creating environments, creating art, that is, and opportunities for people to connect and remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what one of the more powerful aspects of your art style is that when people witness it, we might not be saying the same things, but it resonates in a way that maybe could be described as similar. There's some commonality to it. And I think this whole process, as you're alluding to with the train cars being linked, is relational in nature. And it's interesting that a lot of culture and technology, while it's marketed as being social media, a lot of it is actually serving to isolate us and keep us looking down and away from the world, rather than like bringing our eyes level with other pairs of eyes and other people who are in a space looking outward together. And I think that really is kind of the work that we have. And I think art is one of the best ways to do that. I think with live music, it really is a great way to be in a space, having a shared experience. If you're at a museum and you're looking at a piece of art with somebody, again, you might not have the same experience, but it's like a meeting place. It's like a place where both of your attentions are brought to one shared object, and you're both communicating with it, and in a sense communicating with each other, because you're having that shared thing. And it's like that space, that shared sense of consciousness. I think that within it has the attributes that will actually give us the tools and the understandings to do this work of creating this train and becoming your own train car and being resilient enough to support the community around you. It's like by just bringing your attention to things that are good in that way and with other people. I think it's crucial. It's
Choo
the biggest
choo.
thing. Yeah.
That's what we do on the train a lot when we're like wanting to, just amplify what somebody said. It's like choo
Yeah.
choo,
Yeah, I
and
love
it's
it.
being in that state, to be around somebody that is in a state of awe. You know, they're magnetic in a way. And so I feel like what is happening, at least like on the train, and just put that invite out there to everyone listening, you're invited. Your ticket to ride is your own initiative to getting on board, and you'll get on when you want. Just go to visiontrain.org. It's free. The nonstop track is free, and there's a community of conductors that host actually scheduled trips every day of the week. But there's a lot of renegade train time that happens too, where we just get together, and this is that shared space and of listening, say, to music together at the same time. My friend Marina in Brazil, my friend Jeet in India, these are friends that we know each other through this field, through this force field of this place that is our living room, that is a safe place to be alone together and to create your most important work, right? Like, and we're not alone here. We're there are blooms of humans all over this world. Some of them haven't found each other yet. But I see the train as this opportunity to continue to find each other. And yeah, right now it's mostly like visual artists, there's musicians, there's, sculptors, glass artists, and writers, and all of these folks on the train. But the doctors, the, the scientists, the plumbers, the electricians, the mothers, like there's every single one of us has a role to play, and we may not be creating something that's, an artistic artifact, but what our offering to is our offering matters, and our offering is, you know, it's either on the train or off the train. So that's a great question, is that like, you're on the train if you're a team player, you're on the train if you're like, you know, in a higher state. I think a lot of people also in their state, once they're in a place of kind of like waking up to how fucked up things can be, like society and so many things were just so unfair and so, God, you know, there's a want to really push against it, and there's a necessity for that in that stage of awakening to get angry. But to remember too that to stay in that state isn't going to change anything. Like it's an essential, like we have to get angry, but the kind of protest that I'm really interested in is is in like living it out, like well, if you don't want this, then what do you want? And so, wherever you are, be one of those, you know, symbols of doing things a little differently. Because we can conceptually understand things and it can make sense. But if we don't do it, it never comes into a space of actually being able to really ripple. We have to physically do it. And so I think what's happening with social media and with the internet, there is this great like isolation that's happening. There's also an opportunity for great connection. So what are you putting out there? What are you looking at? And how much are you directing that? And if you feel like you can't direct that, you don't have the support, find the support system that can help you um, override that, and like, what does your front yard look like? Or what is your appearance when you're, walking around? We're giving off signaling constantly. And if our signaling out the smile that we give, the moment that we take to pick up some trash, every single thing does matter. I think it does. And I think that we are the walking art. And and visionary art, I it's not just about those that are making the art and or collecting the art, or the spectator and the musician. Man, if Pop Anthony, I know he knows a little bit, but like some of my musician friends, if they knew the thousands of hours that a collective of artists have been creating together online, you know, like in this time of global change, weaving tales, a light grid around this planet. This is something that connects with our deep ancestors, the yarning. This is what Tyson Yunkaporta writes about in Sand Talk, how indigenous thinking can save the world. It's a great book if anybody wants to tune into that and listen to it because he reads it himself. Also, another book that I want to give a shout out to is Grief and Praise by Martine Prechtel. And in this time of when we're really deepening into the grief, because that's so necessary to be able to be a flowering blessing. We need to also feel that grief of what, uh, you know, of the decomposition, and and come together, find community, come get on the train. So I know I can keep going on, and we're kind of at our time.
Yeah, I do want to give you an opportunity. First of all, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with me. Truly is such a good experience to be able to connect with you and to be able to hear you and connect with just kind of your offering in this way. It really is such a blessing. But I do want to leave a little bit of time for you to be able to plug just kind of what you have going on and where people can find you. And if they want to hop on this train and maybe buy some of your art, do all that stuff, what's next for people who want to stay in contact?
Yeah. Oh, so many ways. So the train, visiontrain.org. You can find that online. You can also find me, Amanda Sage, and just putting it into any search machine, you'll find my website. And if you're, whatever you're interested in, you'll find your ways. You reach out. Currently, I have an exhibit going on in my little hometown of Gunnison, Colorado, at our local arts center, which is an incredible old building, stone building, right on one of the main four corners of the town. And I'm really excited to be doing a kind of residency, and I've been calling it a joyful takeover. And
Yeah, I love that.
just infusing light into this place and bringing some vision trained community here for we have a little mastermind workshop thing going on, and two painting workshops that anybody's welcome to sign up for. The second one is July 12th and 13th, but we're also doing some events, live painting, all kinds of ways to come together. And it's the exhibit is kind of like a span of 27 years. I have my first oil painting in the exhibit, and it's a bit of course, a bit of a reflective journey for me, but also an opportunity to introduce myself to this community. Being also on the board of directors now of the Arts Center in its 41st year. We just went through a big renovation and going through a lot of growing pains and challenges of like, well, what's next, and where's the funding going to come from? I think any organization also, just like everything's going through ebbs and flows, and like, how do we keep doors open? So I'm really interested in how we can keep those doors open and thriving. And if we can't do it in a little town here on the western slope of Colorado, how are we to envision this anywhere else in the world? And so this is a vision train station. My partner and I have also been cultivating the old sawmill, which is just a couple blocks away. He's been working on this as the architecture of remembrance for over 20 years. And we have our own cultural kind of like cultivator project, land-based project. And then the art center just a couple blocks away as like a really profound facility for theater and for visual art, for ceramics, for dance, for movement, for culinary arts. So I see this as it's a gathering point, and it's a prototype. And I'd look to see, how we can, art centers across the United States and the world can, we can prototype for going for the vision train to go and infuse some goodness and bring some tasty bites, and infuse communities all over the world. and just link train cars, because there's so many. It's like we're not reinventing the wheel here. This isn't anything new. This is just an opportunity to get together. And so that's what I'm really interested in. I'm teaching also online. So if you can't come in person, we're doing it. This is the first full hybrid that we're going to do online and in person. So in July 12th and 13th, you can also get on the Vision Train Painting with Light track and join us for that. And the painting method that I teach is stems from the early Renaissance, the Mish technique, and everybody has interpreted it a little bit differently as what came off of Ernst Fuchs's work and his teachings. And so it's, I think, an access and a way to approach an image, the development of an image, to also just be interested in the image. So yeah, you don't have to be a skilled draftsperson yet, but it can open up worlds by approaching light and dark and color in a cyclical kind of way. So yeah, anyone that's interested, come get on board. And the Vision Train is just a flourishing community that is also, very, very open. And you just got to be kind, be nice. This is inclusive.
It's a good takeaway.
I think visionary art to me is like a big part of it is around collaboration and in being inclusive, but also being self-aware, and it's a training ground. How do we meet each other in a place that is generative, that is supportive, and is not cutting each other down. This isn't the place for the deep opinions.
Yeah. I love it. Well, all those links will be attached to the video. So thank you so much again, Amanda, for giving me some of your time. Hopefully we can do this again sometime, because there's just so much that we could cover with these subjects. And
I would love that. Love that. Maybe in a different season.
Yeah.
There's different
Wonderful.
themes that come through. So thanks for doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
This is a big part of it. Doing podcasts and sharing each other's voices, the ripple of inspiration that can come from this is huge. So thank you, Brett, for doing this.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the recognition. All right, we'll catch you next time.
All right. Cheers.
All right, everybody, that was the episode. Thank you for listening all the way through until the end. Once more, that was Amanda Sage. You can check out some of her work over at amandasage.com, or consider joining her online community at visiontrain.org. Looks like they have some pretty cool stuff going on over there, so I would recommend finding yourself a community. If you want to support this show, head on over to patreon.com/21stcenturyvitalism. Consider signing up. It really does help. Even something as small as $5 truly goes a long way. But yeah, it is 2025. I get money, can be kind of tight in some circumstances. So you're also welcome to just subscribe over on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, or like on Facebook. All those things help me grow the platform and continue getting the show to the masses. All right, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.